Hey everybody, this is Brandon, and I thought I'd try to make a new video series where we talk about some of the common deductions found for aid judging in international competition, also for domestic competition that uses the international rules. So I wanted to start off with a very common deduction, something that we see a lot of, and that's the code 21. Let's start off by defining what is a code 21. So here's the IWF rules for Taolu. And under quality of movements is for Group A judging. This is the code 21. This is for the backsweep or huosaotui. Okay, the reason I think it's important to talk about the huosaotui is because it is a very easily avoidable deduction, whereas other deductions like a 70 or even some of the stances and a 30 are error-based. It's based on something that an athlete does as a mistake during competition. A huosaotui, a 21 deduction, is something that I think is caused by habit. It's caused by bad technique that can be fixed, however, with a little bit of focused practice. Let's take a look at how the Code 21 is applied. There are only two errors that can be made during a huosaotui for a judge to deduct. And that is that the sole of the sweeping foot comes off the carpet, and the second is that the sweeping leg is bent. Okay, those are the only two things that a Group A judge can deduct for. We are not looking for if a full rotation is made. We're not looking for the height of the body during the sweep. We're not looking at the speed of the sweep. We're looking for two things: that the foot stays in contact with the ground during the sweep, and also that the sweeping leg is straight. First, let's define the deduction in terms of like a judging. So here's a screenshot. This is from the judging course materials. That has a little bit more information than that's available in the rule book. So here it is again, the huosaotui, code 21. The judging method is that the sole of the sweeping foot leaves the ground even intermittently, or the sweeping leg bends. Should any of those errors appear at any time while sweeping, the deduction shall be made. What that means is that if the sole of the foot loses contact at any time during the sweep, or if the leg bends at any time during the sweep, once the sweep begins all the way to completion, we're looking for those two things. Okay? If we see one of those two things, the Group A judge is supposed to deduct. Let's define bent. It says sweeping leg bent. In terms of judging, there are kind of two ways to define bent. There's bent, and then there's also obviously bent or clearly bent. Let's first define clearly bent or obviously bent. Here's another screenshot from the judging manual. Clearly bent or clearly leaning forward, also written as obviously bent, means 45 degrees or greater. Okay, this is applied for things like the body leaning during a mabu. So let's go back to the rules. Here is a mabu, code 51. The upper body bent obviously forward. This means the upper body must be bent 45 degrees forward. This is also applied to things like the legs being bent during an aerial or a butterfly. So here we see leg bent obviously, legs bent obviously for sukumfam and for shwenza. When we're looking for a bent leg in these cases, we're looking for 45 degrees or more. But in the case of the backsweep and the huosaotui, we're just looking for bent. And this is defined as a technique that is required to be straight, but can be visually seen to be slightly bent. That is a definition of bent. So it doesn't matter if it's 5 degrees or if it's 90 degrees. If a judge can visibly tell that something is not straight, we define it as being bent. So I took a few screen captures of the scoreboard. This is from women's compulsory changquan from the last World Wushu Championships, to kind of show you how common the Code 21 is. This is Italy. All right, this is the scoreboard. So this is the Group A score, and these are the deductions that were made. This is the Group B scores, and the scores for each of the 4 Group B judges. And this is the Group C score, and also these numbers relate to the difficulty or difficulty connection movements and whether or not they executed them correctly. So here under Group A, we can clearly see a Code 21. Let's go to the next competitor. This is Turkey, also code 21. This is Kazakhstan, also code 21. France, code 21. Korea, code 21. This is the only deduction that she got for Group A, code 21. This is hard to see. This is USA, also code 21. Macau, same as Korea. The only A deduction that was given is a code 21. Let's take a look at a couple of videos. These are just some things I grabbed from the same competition, and we can kind of walk through and see if we can catch the code 21. So first competitor from Australia. Okay, so there's a couple things going on here. Obviously, at the end of her sweep, she's losing her balance. She's taking kind of an extra step, and her body is swaying. These both would constitute a code 70. But let's take a look at the sweep one more time in real time, and then we'll see if she was deducted for it. Okay, what did you think? We're going to see her scoreboard right here. And this is it, code 21, and then 2 code 70s for loss of balance. Let's take a look again, and I'll slow it down, and we can kind of figure out why is she getting the code 21. So her sweep is starting, and I'm just going to go frame by frame through this. All right, let's back that up. So at the beginning of her sweep, immediately when she begins her sweep, her back foot comes off the ground. And as you can kind of see in the video, it's almost as if the sole of her foot, instead of being parallel with the ground, is now lateral and is facing the judges. In this competition, the judges are on this side, so they're getting a very good look at this foot. She's getting a slight bend during her sweep, not too visible. But then as she finishes her sweep, as part of this loss of balance, you can see the leg bending. So there's two things. She could have been deducted for the foot being off the ground and facing the judges. It could have also been for the bend at the end. I would guess it's from her foot being off the ground. So again, her score, code 21 and 2 code 70s. Next competitor. What do you think? Let's take a look again. Yeah, I think this is clearly a code 21, and we'll take a look at her scoreboard there. Yeah, it was. This is Macau, the screenshot that we saw earlier. Again, it's the only A deduction that she got, code 21. Let's take a look again in slow motion. So as she begins her sweep, her leg comes off quite obviously. So her foot is raising up with the toe pointed kind of vertically. It's off the ground all the way until the very end. In addition, if we back this up, about halfway through her sweep, her leg begins to hook, right? So if a judge picks this up, and it's a little bent there at the end too, those are two, both of the errors for the sweep happen. The foot is off the ground and the leg is bending, and she's getting deducted. Otherwise, look, has very good scores. Pretty good B score, got all of her non-due, and this is the only A deduction. She had a 9.3, so she's losing 0.1 just because of her back sweep. All right, again, another bobble at the end probably would result in a code 70, but let's take a look at the sweep in real time. What do you think? We're going to see her scoreboard. There it is, code 21. Let's take a look at Korea. One more time. And code 21. It's a shame. She has very good Group B scores, a good final score even. And this code 21 is a deduction. She's losing 0.1 points. Okay, clear bending of the leg. All right. This is the end of her sweep. The leg is bent. And her score, there, code 21. Last female competitor from the Ukraine. What do you think? Pretty good sweep. Let's take a look. Scoreboard says no. No deductions for Group A, so that was a clean back sweep. I should point out, look at her final score. She got a 9.47. Okay, let's back that up to some of the earlier competitors. Korea had a 9.42 with the code 21 deduction. So in this case, she would have gotten a 9.52 if she had executed that back sweep properly. Let's take a look at her back sweep again. Yeah, I mean, it just, her foot is clearly off the ground. Her leg hooks a little bit at the end, and she's deducted for that, for code 21. So in this case, it's causing someone to lose a placing. Let's switch over to the men. The angle here is a little different, and this is not a compulsory form. This is individuals. Okay, I think this is a really good example for a back sweep in regards to how the judges are judging the back sweep. Let's take a look at it again. I would argue that in terms of, from a purely Wushu standpoint, this is not a very good back sweep. It's quite slow. It doesn't look like he completes the full rotation, and his body is quite high, especially at the end of the sweep. It looks like he's raising up early. But keep in mind, the A judges are only looking for two things: if the foot is touching the ground and the sweeping leg is straight. So let's look at it again with that in mind. Okay, no deduction for the sweep. Another competitor. Also, not a great sweep. Kind of slow, but look at the foot and look at the angle of the leg. All right, now it's hard to see, but there's no code 21 there, so that was counted as a good sweep. This one's interesting. All right, sweeping with the left leg. Let's take a look at it again. It's a little tricky. You're not used to seeing this. All right, this is at the end of his form. Really interesting ending, but with a clear code 21 for the sweep. Let's take a look at the sweep in slow motion, and I think you'll be able to see why. All right, so as he's starting the sweep, his foot immediately comes off the ground. Right, so it's kind of hidden here behind his body. But you can see as he comes around, that foot is off the ground. In fact, the foot doesn't touch the ground until the very end. And in this case, the judges are on this side of the carpet, so they're clearly seeing that, and that was the correct deductions, code 21. Okay, let's take a look at this again. More than one thing going on with the sweep. Okay, so one, the leg is clearly bent as he comes around, right? Let's go in reverse here. One, okay, before we talk about the leg being bent, as his foot is coming around and facing the judges, in this case the judges are on this side, his foot is way off the ground, way off the ground. Then as he's finishing the sweep, his leg hooks around, right? So foot off the ground, leg bent. Two, he's lost his balance. His knee is touching the ground. Also, his right hand touches the ground. So this could be a 71, right? This is for loss of balance with an added point of contact. Some judges might see this as a code 72, as a fall, because there's 2 points of contact, a knee and a hand. Most likely it was just a 71. Hard to see there, but I think that's the 21 is right there. All right, what do we think about that one? Well, here it is. Group A score 5.0, so there was no deduction for any of his quality of movements. Let's take a look at the sweep again. Let's take a look at it in slow motion. Pretty quick. Okay, so at the very beginning of this sweep, when we're looking at it in slow motion, we can see that the foot leaves the ground. But remember two things. One, the judges are looking at this in real time, right? They don't have slow motion. They can't go backwards and forwards like we are now. And two, look at the angle of this sweep in relation to the judges. The judges are on this side of the carpet. So even though we have this high vantage point from the camera, the judges don't have that angle at all. They probably can't even see that the foot leaves the ground. And throughout the sweep, his toes pointed down. Looks like it's keeping a point of contact. You can kind of see there with the shadow of his leg. Leg stays straight. And no deduction. So I'm going to keep this short. Again, for a code 21, for a back sweep, judges can deduct you only for two things. Again, that is if your sweeping foot leaves contact with the ground, or if the sweeping leg is bent at any time during the sweep, from when you begin your sweep until you end. I think all this really takes is some focus training. It's not like trying to increase the height of your jumps or trying to increase the speed of one of your techniques. It's not so much about making the thing more dynamic. It's just about clean technique. And in fact, I would say that most athletes would do better if we just slowed down. Before the back sweep, keep those two things in mind. Foot must touch the ground, leg must be straight. I hope you guys found this helpful. I'd like to do more videos like this where we talk about specific codes. If you have any suggestions for what you think would be interesting as far as future videos, let me know. And if you have any questions about stuff that we went over in this video, feel free to leave comments.